Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are finally going over my third quarter stats. So every 3 months on my channel I've kind of been doing my stats for the recent reading months, just for myself to document what I've been reading and how it's been going, because this is my second real year of reading, and so I'm trying to keep up with the statistics because they're fun. And I also just gloating about how I'm actually good at reading which I haven't been able to say before in my life, so it just is kind of exciting and fun for me as well. But we're just gonna jump right in. This is going to be July, August, and September's statistics through my reading. So, over-explained, but yeah, let's just jump right into it. So in July, I managed to read 13 books, which is kind of crazy because June was a super slumpy reading month. I was really only reading graphic novels, and then July I was still kind of slumping, but still managed to read a lot. In this month I did Summer Ween, hosted by Gabby Reads and Olivia Reads a Latte, and that caused a lot of the reading for me. That was probably 5 or so of the books that I ended up reading, and then I also participated in the Literally Dead book club, as always, where we read Hide by Kiersten White. And I would say out of all of the books that I did manage to read in July, and if you're curious what all of that was, I will have my quarterly wrap-up, because I suck at wrap-ups. It'll be up here for you guys, and probably maybe, I don't promise anything, could be in the description. But out of the 13 books that I read, I think my favorites for July would be Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is an anthology graphic novel style. Oh my god, it's wonderful, it's amazing. I can't give it more praise. It's the spooky season, because I think this is Booktober Day whatever. Great for spooky season. I would highly recommend if you can get your hands on it. And the other book that I really enjoyed was Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. And this is a creepypasta, Reddit story. Yeah, it was pretty good though. I really enjoyed my reading experience of it. In July, I read 2,385 pages, which is quite nice, quite good number, quite high for me. And I listened to 15 hours and 15 minutes of audiobooks, which kind of fluctuates. That's the standard hours that if you open up, that's the at one time speed hours. I don't typically convert, which I really need to, I know, but I sometimes listen to books between a 1.8 to 2.5 depending on the experience, so it doesn't accurately give you the right statistics, but it's a good gauge of I probably read 2 or 3 audiobooks in July. In August, I actually only read 5 books because I was traveling and slumping, but my favorite book had to be Wild as the Witch by Rachel Griffin. This was so enjoyable. This gave Oregon such Pacific Northwestern vibes, because the day after I finished this, we got a crazy thunder and lightning storm, which is super rare in Oregon. It was absolutely magical. This is such a good story. It's basically a YA romance, but with a witch and this boy who she hates, and he doesn't like witches, so she's can't tell him I'm a witch. But they work at an animal rehabilitation facility, so there's a bunch of wolves and the owls, and our main character Iris is all this boy sucks, I'm gonna curse him, but not really, because I don't want to actually curse him, because she's kind of a good person. It's kind of weird, but she decides to put her feelings into the ground when an owl swoops away with the curse, and she has to go on a little hike through the Pacific Northwest with the boy who she hates so much to find this owl, and it's just such a good journey. I highly recommend this. And in August, I only managed to read 451 pages, which, that's for me, that's about 2 books. That's about 2 books, which is pretty good. I physically read 2 books. That's great. That's fantastic news. And I listened to 42 hours worth of audiobooks. So you can tell what's like best when you're in a reading slump. If you're trying to get out of a reading slump, pick up some easier reads, some shorter books so you feel more accomplished, but you don't have to spend as much time if it feels daunting to read, but also audiobooks, because you can do chores around your house and listen to them, and it's not as big of a task, really. I would recommend, if you're slumping, try that, see how you do. If you're still in a slump, maybe take a pause on reading for a little while. And then September is where things got really good for me. I read 15 books in September. 15 books. What? That's crazy. That's like absolute crazy talk. I really got back into reading in September. I've had a lot of video projects to work on. I've just been excited about reading again. My favorite book of the month was, with no questions, this beautiful, beautiful book, All of Us Villains, by Amanda Foody and Christina Lynn Herman. This is a tournament fantasy where 8 families, I can never remember the number, it's like 7 or 8-ish families, nominate or select or force a child, a high schooler basically, to go into this tournament every 20 years to basically fight to the death, and whoever wins gets this unlimited amount of high magic that no one else will have access to. I loved this. I loved this so much. This is the first book that I tabbed. I just had a total blast reading it. I thought it was so much fun. It really just, it just makes me so happy. I'm literally like about to read this like ASAP. It's so good. It's just so good. I don't know. I highly recommend. If you want to read a Hunger Games-esque book, but like with crazy, crazy, amazing magic, this is the one for you. And the other book that I really like, just like a little shout out, I read the first volume of Lore Olympus, written by Rachel Smith. Oh, I'm obsessed. I've taken a pause on the second volume to read other things that are actually on the TBR, but wow, 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 so good. It's a Hades and Persephone graphic novel retelling or reimagining set in the modern world, and it's so freaking good. It's so good. I love it so much. I cannot wait to continue. Volume 3, I believe, comes out soon, and then Volume 4 early next year, I want to say. So the next step that I want to go over is how I read all of these books, what format I read them in. I read 8 physical books, which for me is really good. I had 10 ebooks read, which I'm not typically an ebook person. When I do, it's usually graphic novels, so it's not like that great, but I am getting a little bit better over time reading ebooks. My little brain has a hard time with ebooks because I can't see the progress. So when you're reading a physical book, you can see like, oh, I'm so close to the end, and you can make that push. With an ebook, it's hard for me to know where in the book I'm at, so it feels longer than it usually is, and that causes problems for my little brain to focus. I listened to 9 audiobooks during this time, and I read 6 books by Mixed Media, which I think I've discovered this year has been absolutely hands down my favorite way to read a book. It just helps me fall into the story more because I can physically read along, but it's not as difficult for my like little dyslexia brain to be like, what are words? How do I like do this? And I can kind of just scan along the page, and my brain can hear the words and kind of do whatever it needs to do to get me into the story, and it just makes reading faster. I feel more accomplished. It's just overall like a great time. That's just been my thing lately. And during this quarter, I read across 7 different genres, which is always a pretty good feeling. My, of course, #1 genre was fantasy with 11 books, which is so good because my fantasy has been kind of slacking this year. I need to step it up, but it's also autumn now, officially, which means, what does it mean? It means fantasy, like cozy fantasies. I'm so excited, like cozy fantasies. Nothing else screams cozy fantasy here, but you know what I mean. You know that feeling of like reading a warm autumn cozy fantasy. That's what I'm super freaking excited for. Tied for second place of my next read tied for second place my next most read genres, there we go, sort of, would be at 7 books each, horror and romance. They are tied for second place, which is so interesting because I know that 4 of those, no, all of the romance was actually me finishing and rereading Heartstopper, so it's not quite the same, but I did read 7 horror books, which makes me so freaking happy. I really want to continue increasing my horror consumption this year as well as next year. I'm just enjoying horror so much more than usual. And then, no surprise, 3rd place is thriller because I read a good amount of thrillers because I'm in a book club that reads a bunch of thrillers. I've read just one translated work, which was The Ice Palace by Tarji Vesaas, and this was translated from Norwegian. And that's it, which is not great. Usually I would say I probably read closer to like between 3 and 6 translated works in a quarter, so I definitely need to like step up that game for this last quarter, you know? As for book format, I read 10 graphic novels in the last 3 months, and that's just such a good feeling. I'm really in my graphic novel era. This is like my moment to shine. I've never read graphic novels before this year, and they are truly changing my entire life because I don't know if it's kind of like watching a TV show where you can see the characters and you get more attached because you can see them so vividly because it's literally in ink right in front of you. It's really changed how I view my stories because as great as my mind can be, I do have a very difficult time creating a character's entire look. Like, people that do fan art, kudos, because I could never. You tell me a description of a person, I'm like, I have a vague outline, but you tell me the scenery and I can picture the entire world. That's just how my brain works, so it's really fun having graphic novels to really show me what they're supposed to look like. And then as for like the more exciting aspect, I read 15 novels, which, wonderful. I definitely stepped up my like reading game this quarter with reading like normal books, normal sized books, because my short story / novella section is only 5 total, which is crazy because normally those are pretty high because I need to read a lot of short things to feel accomplished because I'm a slow reader. Say it with me. A girl's not great at reading. The battle of age demographic has always been something I'm interested in looking at because I don't really care if it's a young adult or if it's adult. I have a good time either way. Typically my adults are new adult anyway, so it's not that weird for me, but I do like to see based off what publishers are marketing their books as and how that differs. Hide by Kiersten White is a great example. This was marketed as an adult book, but a lot of people had issues with it because it comes off very YA. The characters are very YA. They're all like 18, 19 years old, and I think that lends itself good because it makes sense for the plot why all these like adults are joining this weird tournament of hide and seek to win $50,000, where if these were high schoolers doing that, bad things wouldn't be as likely because they're like 16 or whatever. But it does read quite young, so I understand the complaints, but for me, like, it didn't matter because if it was young adult or adult, I enjoyed the story nonetheless. So I can see where the complaints are, but I always find this very interesting. So I ended up reading 19 young adult and 13 adult, which, interesting. Normally, when I do these stats and I look at it, I usually read more adult than I do young adult, but I don't go seeking out either demographic, but I do tend to find the people that I watch on BookTube read more adult, and then I'll read those books that they're recommending. Whereas when I find books on my own, I tend to kind of lean more YA. As for staying relevant on, you know, BookTube, I have read 11 2020 new releases, which is pretty good. I have this often debate with myself, as I'm sure most booktubers do, where I don't necessarily seek out new releases all the time, but I find myself picking them up a lot. One, because there's a lot of hype around them, there's a lot of conversations happening, people are excited about new releases, but also less people are excited about backlist books, so you want to like stay relevant on BookTube for views, but at the same time, backlist books are also good. And so it's very interesting how often I find myself reading a new release when I don't seek them out or necessarily intend to, but then end up reading so many that I don't even realize. Next step that I want to briefly touch on is the LGBTQIA+ representation in the books I've been reading. And out of all the books, only 13 have had the main character or a side character have LGBTQIA+ qualities to them. And that's good out of versus the 20 that are completely absent. And I think it also comes down to reading backlist books. You're often reading non-queer books, whereas nowadays it's a lot more common to find relevant but also queer books. So I definitely still need to get better. Still kind of slacking. I really need to up my disability representation in books, but it's harder for me to just just naturally find. I don't feel like disability main characters are as common because, you know, they are a minority of a group that are often ignored by society and treated poorly, and so it makes sense that publishers might not push it as often, but it is something that I do want to seek out a little bit more, have more diversity in my books. And speaking of more diversity in my books, a girl needs to read more diverse authors. My POC author and my LGBTQ authors severely lacking. I definitely need to step up that game. But I also, this is not trying to make excuses or cop out, because I know that I need to do better about that, period. But at the same time, I often pick up books from Scribd, and that's the majority how I get my books, and there's very little information about authors. They don't have photos there, they barely have descriptions there, and so I don't typically know much about the author until I get onto Goodreads. And Goodreads kind of is like, are they white or are they a person of color by their picture? And then maybe depending on the bio, they'll tell you where they live. But I feel Goodreads severely lacks, and no author has to tell us how they identify ever. But when trying to seek out authors who identify a certain way, it's really hard going on Goodreads, and that's not a part of it. If Goodreads wanted to maybe update their system a little bit to have like pronouns attached to the author, that would be pretty helpful, because it's hard to know which authors I read that identify a part of the LGBTQ community, because it's not going to be on Goodreads, and I don't personally do a lot of research on my authors to find out unless it's already kind of known by the BookTube community. Then I know. Most of my authors have very short bios, and I don't know. So like pronouns at the least could be very helpful. That's all I'm saying. I still need to do better. I'm still doing quite terrible. I am excited to be participating in Blackoween to bring more diverse authors into my life, because I'm doing bad, and that's just that. I've read 27 different authors in these 3 months, which I feel like is pretty standard. I don't do a lot of author repeats unless it's like a series right now, just because there's too many books that there's just too many books that I need to read. But out of those authors, 13 of them I have read from before, and 20 of them I've never read from, which I love discovering new authors. It's wonderful. And the last step before we get into the juicy star ratings is how many rereads I've had. And technically 4. I reread the Heartstopper series, which is the first time ever rereading a book. Ever. Period. Point blank. I've never reread a book before in my entire life. And I finally can say that I have. And I have many plans to reread books in the future, which I'm very excited about. I never really understood the love of rereads until recently, where I was like, oh, I want to revisit the story and the characters. I want to be there again. So that's really exciting. Okay, now to the star ratings, the actual juicy part. I have been having amazing success rate on my reading lately. I've just been enjoying most of what I've picked up. I've had few complaints and issues on the books that I've been reading, which is just, it's just such a good feeling. So starting from the bottom, the lowest rated books that I've had were 3 stars. I've had nothing less than a 3-star. You're fine, baby boy. 3 stars is the lowest I've given books, and I only had 5 3-stars. That's so good. That's so good! And going to 3.5, I've also only had 5 of those. 10 books in the 3 to 3.5 range. Amazing. Beautiful. Never been seen before. Jumping up to 4 stars, I've read 9 4-star books. That's amazing. That's incredible. Out of 4.5s, I've had 3 of those. Do you know what that means? Have you done the math? That means that I've given 9 5 stars. Granted, 6 of those were Heartstopper, but that's still good. That's still good. I will still take that. That means that this was one, Lore Olympus was one. There was another. Fantastic. That's amazing. I'm loving reading so much lately, and I'm having so much fun this October already with the books that I'm picking up. I'm in such a good reading spot, and it makes me very pleased and very excited for what's to come. Please let me know down below, like, what have been some of your favorite books the last few months? Like, what have you really loved? I would love to know. Maybe I can stick it on a TBR somewhere along the way. I'm very interested. But that's it. That's all the stats I got for you guys. Let me know how your reading is going, and also if you enjoy these kinds of videos, if there's a way that I can make them more interesting for you guys to watch. I know that I'm kind of just like spitting out facts to you. Is there a way that you would rather this be formatted to make it more interesting? Let me know. I will gladly try out some new stuff, take a peek-see at what we can do to make this entertaining. But thank you guys for hanging out with me and watching this video, especially if you made it to the end. I greatly appreciate you. Give this video a like if you enjoyed. It helps my channel, and subscribe down below if you're interested in seeing more videos from me, ya girl, who's doing Booktober this year. That means I'm posting a book. Yeah, I'm like publishing a book every day. It's like kind of crazy. No, I'm publishing a video. I'm uploading every single day. There we go. That makes more sense, right? Yes. So yeah, I am uploading every single day in the month of October. So if you want to see a lot of bookish content from me, I've got a bunch of reading vlogs going out. I've got a lot of bookish tags, bookish videos. I've got just a little bit of everything for you. So if you're interested in hanging out with me more this month, subscribe down below. But that's it. I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye!